In the summer of 1914, the world stumbled into a conflict unlike any before. Called the Great War, it was supposed to be short and glorious. Instead, it became a brutal struggle that consumed empires and a generation. They called it, with desperate hope, the war to end all wars. The world was forever changed. The Great War did not begin in a vacuum. The stage had been set for decades. Europe in the early 20th century was a continent simmering with tension, a complex web of rivalries, ambitions, and fears. It was a time of great progress and great anxiety. On the surface, it was an age of elegance and innovation. But beneath that veneer, powerful forces were pushing the great powers ever closer to a confrontation. A sense of competition was everywhere. Nations competed for territory, for resources, for military strength, and for national pride. This constant jostling for dominance created a deeply unstable and suspicious atmosphere across the continent. One of the most powerful forces at play was nationalism. This was an intense pride in one's country, a belief that one's own nation was superior to all others. In Germany, it fueled a desire for a place in the sun. In France, it stoked a burning need to reclaim lands lost in a previous war. In the Balkans, a region often called the powder keg of Europe, various ethnic groups dreamed of creating their own independent nations, free from the control of the large, multinational empires like Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. This passionate nationalism made compromise difficult and conflict almost inevitable. Another key factor was the system of military alliances. The major powers of Europe had grouped themselves into two opposing camps. On one side was the Triple Alliance, which included Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. On the other was the Triple Entente, an understanding between France, Russia, and Great Britain. These alliances were meant to keep the peace by creating a balance of power. The idea was that an attack on one nation would be seen as an attack on all its allies, making any country hesitant to start a war. In reality, they created a dangerous tripwire system that could turn a small local dispute into a massive continent-wide war. Finally, there was a relentless arms race. Driven by suspicion and imperial ambitions, the great powers spent vast sums of money building up their armies and navies. Germany expanded its fleet, challenging Great Britain's long-held mastery of the seas. Armies grew larger, and military leaders created intricate war plans, ready to be executed at a moment's notice. This constant preparation for war, known as militarism, created a mindset where war was seen not as a last resort, but as an acceptable tool of foreign policy. The generals and admirals gained more influence, and the tools of war were ready and waiting. All that was needed was a single spark to ignite the entire continent. It is easy to see World War I as a distant event, a sepia-toned tragedy from a world that no longer exists. The soldiers who fought in its trenches are gone. The empires that clashed have vanished from the map. Yet the war's shadow stretches long and deep into our own time. To understand the 21st century, we must first understand the conflict that defined the 20th. It was more than just a series of battles. It was a profound rupture in human history that set in motion forces that continue to shape our world today, from the geography of the Middle East to the very nature of modern warfare. The war's legacy is written across the globe. The collapse of the German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, and Ottoman empires led to the creation of many new countries. The borders drawn in the war's aftermath, often with little regard for the ethnic or religious groups who lived there, have been a source of instability and conflict ever since, particularly in the Balkans and the Middle East. The war also propelled the United States onto the world stage as a major global power, a role it continues to play. It also sowed the seeds for another, even more devastating global conflict just 2 decades later, as the harsh terms of the peace treaty left Germany humiliated and resentful. World War I also changed society in fundamental ways. The immense scale of the war effort required the total mobilization of entire nations. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, taking on jobs that had previously been reserved for men. This experience helped fuel the movement for women's suffrage and challenged traditional ideas about gender roles. The war also brought about enormous advances in medicine and technology. Doctors developed new techniques for treating wounds and trauma, while the technologies of war, like airplanes and radio communication, would later transform civilian life in peacetime. Most importantly, The Great War left an indelible scar on the human psyche. The sheer brutality and industrial-scale killing shattered the 19th century belief in progress and reason. A generation was lost, and those who survived were often called the Lost Generation, disillusioned and haunted by what they had witnessed. The war inspired a wave of art, literature, and poetry that attempted to make sense of the senseless horror. By studying World War I, we are not just looking at the past, we are examining the origins of our modern world, its conflicts, its technologies, and its deepest anxieties. It serves as a powerful and enduring lesson about the catastrophic consequences of nationalism, ambition, and failed diplomacy. At the dawn of the 20th century, Europe was not a continent of independent nations acting alone. Instead, it was a place of deep-seated suspicion, where countries bound themselves together in complex defensive pacts. These alliances were meant to be a shield, a promise of collective security designed to deter any single nation from acts of aggression. The thinking was logical: if you attack one of us, you must face all of us. This balance of power, it was hoped, would ensure a lasting peace. However, these agreements transformed the continent into a political tinderbox, where a single misstep could trigger an unstoppable chain reaction, dragging everyone into a conflict they could not control. The two great opposing blocs stood like armed camps, watching each other with wary eyes. At the heart of one was the Triple Alliance, a pact forged between the powerful German Empire, the sprawling Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Kingdom of Italy. Germany, a newly unified and ambitious nation, sought to secure its position in the center of Europe. Austria-Hungary, a multi-ethnic empire struggling with internal divisions, looked to Germany for strength and support. Italy, though a member, had its own ambitions, and its commitment was seen by many as uncertain. This alliance was built on a foundation of mutual defense and a shared fear of their powerful neighbors. Facing them was the Triple Entente, a more informal but equally potent understanding between the French Republic, the vast Russian Empire, and the mighty British Empire. France, still nursing the wounds of a humiliating defeat by Germany in 1871, desperately sought allies to counter its powerful neighbor. Russia, with its massive army, shared France's concerns about German and Austro-Hungarian expansion. Great Britain, traditionally maintaining a policy of splendid isolation, grew increasingly alarmed by Germany's naval buildup, which directly challenged its dominance of the seas. This concern pushed Britain to form closer ties with its historic rivals, France and Russia. What was intended as a system for maintaining peace became in effect a guarantee of a widespread war. The alliances were rigid and binding, leaving little room for diplomacy or de-escalation once a crisis began. A small, regional disagreement could no longer be contained. The commitments made in secret treaties and formal agreements meant that a conflict in the Balkans could quickly draw in Germany, which would then trigger France's and Russia's obligations. The system of alliances was a vast, intricate machine, and once set in motion, it would be nearly impossible to stop. It ensured that any war would not be a limited affair, but a full-scale European catastrophe. Across Europe, nationalism and imperialism fueled fierce rivalries. Germany sought global power, France longed for revenge, and the Balkans simmered with ethnic tensions. The scramble for colonies and the clash of empires created a powder keg. By 1914, Europe's leaders were trapped by their own ambitions on the brink of war. As tensions rose, European nations glorified military power, pouring resources into armies and navies. The arms race, especially between Britain and Germany, fueled fear and suspicion. Detailed war plans and powerful leaders made conflict seem inevitable. The stage was set for a massive war, just waiting for a spark. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand visited Sarajevo. A group of Bosnian Serb nationalists, backed by the Black Hand, plotted his assassination. After a failed attempt, Gavrilo Princip seized his chance and shot the Archduke and his wife. Their deaths set off a chain reaction, igniting the First World War. In 1914, Germany launched the Schlieffen Plan, racing through Belgium toward Paris, hoping for a swift victory. But fierce Belgian resistance and the miracle of the Marne shattered those illusions. Both sides dug in, stretching trenches from the North Sea to Switzerland. The dream of quick glory faded, replaced by the grim reality of trench warfare. Trench warfare on the Western Front created a hellish landscape of mud, barbed wire, and death. Soldiers endured freezing winters, disease, and constant fear. No man's land was a deadly wasteland, and going over the top meant almost certain death. The psychological scars of this brutal static conflict lasted a lifetime. In 1916, Verdun and the Somme became symbols of World War I's horror. At Verdun, France and Germany fought a brutal battle of attrition. The Somme saw the British suffer their bloodiest day, with nearly 60,000 casualties. Both battles left landscapes shattered and millions dead or wounded, haunting reminders of the war's senseless slaughter. While the Western Front's stalemate dominated headlines, World War I was truly global, raging across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the world's oceans. On the Eastern Front, vast open plains meant mobile warfare. Massive armies clashed, with battles like Tannenberg devastating Russia. In the south, Italy joined the Allies, fighting brutal mountain battles against Austria-Hungary in the Alps. The Ottoman Empire fought the Allies at Gallipoli and in the Middle East, while Germany's U-boats waged relentless submarine warfare at sea. Colonial troops from India, Africa, Australia, and beyond fought in distant campaigns, making this a war of empires. The global scale of the conflict would forever alter the relationship between imperial powers and their colonies. "1917 changed everything. Russia collapsed into revolution and exited the war, ceding vast territory to Germany. Freed from the east, Germany gambled on a final offensive in the west. Meanwhile, the United States, provoked by submarine attacks and the Zimmermann telegram, declared war on Germany. President Wilson called it a crusade to make the world safe for democracy. American industry, money, and fresh troops tipped the balance. The Central Powers now faced a race against time. Could Germany win before America's full strength arrived? The tide had turned. The Great War marked the end for Europe's old monarchies. Kaiser Wilhelm II's ambitions and missteps led to his abdication and exile. Tsar Nicholas II's autocracy and failures brought revolution and his death. King George V, a constitutional monarch, became a symbol of British unity, even changing his family's name to Windsor. Emperor Franz Joseph's empire crumbled, his death preceding Austria-Hungary's collapse. These rulers were swept away as the old world order vanished in the fires of war. As monarchs faded, civilian leaders shaped the war's outcome. President Wilson led America into war for democracy, then championed the League of Nations. France's Clemenceau, the Tiger, demanded total victory and harsh peace terms. Britain's Lloyd George balanced punishment with stability, steering his nation through crisis. These leaders mobilized entire societies, made fateful decisions, and set the stage for a turbulent new world. Their choices would echo long after the guns fell silent. Generals trained for old wars faced the horrors of industrial slaughter. Germany's Hindenburg and Ludendorff became national heroes, then military dictators. France's Joffre and Pétain saved Paris and Verdun, but at immense cost. Britain's Haig remains controversial, accused of waste, credited with ultimate victory. America's Pershing built a new army, insisting on independent command and leading decisive offensives. Their strategies and failures shaped the fate of millions and the outcome of the war. World War I was shaped by ordinary people, heroes like Alvin York, the Red Baron, Edith Cavell, and Lawrence of Arabia. Their courage, sacrifice, and daring acts defined the era, from the trenches to the skies and deserts. These faces from the ranks became legends, inspiring millions and leaving a legacy that endures to this day. Life in the trenches was a relentless cycle of fear, exhaustion, and hardship. Soldiers endured mud, disease, and constant shell fire. The stench, rats, and lice were ever present. Even in rare moments of rest, anxiety and trauma haunted them. For many, the scars, both physical and mental, would last a lifetime. World War I transformed life on the home front. Nations mobilized, governments took control, and daily life was upended by rationing and shortages. Propaganda fueled unity and fear, while air raids shattered the sense of safety. The war blurred the line between soldier and civilian, leaving a lasting mark on every home. The departure of millions of men to the battlefields created a massive labor shortage on the home front, and women stepped forward to fill the void. They entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, taking on jobs that had long been considered exclusively for men. Women became streetcar conductors, police officers, and bank clerks. Most critically, they poured into the factories, producing the shells, bullets, and weapons that were essential for the war effort. These munitionettes worked long hours in dangerous conditions, often handling toxic chemicals like TNT that could turn their skin yellow, earning them the nickname Canary Girls. Their contribution was vital. Without their labor, the war machine would have ground to a halt. Beyond the factories, women served the war effort in a variety of other crucial roles. Thousands joined organizations like the Women's Land Army, working on farms to ensure the nation was fed. They took on the physically demanding tasks of plowing fields and harvesting crops, replacing the farmers and laborers who were now in the trenches. Women also served as nurses both at home and near the front lines, caring for the endless stream of wounded soldiers. Courageous women like those in the First Aid Nursing Yeomanry, or Fanny, worked as ambulance drivers on the Western Front, often under fire, ferrying the wounded from dressing stations to hospitals. This newfound importance in the economic and social life of their nations had a profound impact on the fight for women's rights. Before the war, the movement for women's suffrage, the right to vote, had been active but had met with stiff resistance. However, women's immense contribution to the war effort made it increasingly difficult to argue that they were not deserving of full citizenship. Their competence and dedication in traditionally male roles challenged old prejudices about their capabilities. The war acted as a catalyst, accelerating social change and strengthening the case for political equality in a way that years of peaceful protest had not. In the war's aftermath, the political landscape began to shift. In recognition of their vital wartime contributions, several countries moved to grant women the right to vote. In 1918, Britain passed the Representation of the People Act, which gave the vote to women over the age of 30 who met a property qualification. The United States followed with the 19th Amendment in 1920, granting universal suffrage to women. While full equality was still a long way off, the Great War marked a pivotal moment. It shattered many traditional gender roles, and set in motion a social and political transformation that would continue to shape the rights and opportunities of women for decades to come. In spring 1918, Germany launched its last great offensive. Freed from the Eastern Front, Ludendorff gambled everything on Operation Michael, hoping to break the Allies before American forces arrived. The attack was fierce and gained ground, but German troops soon exhausted themselves. By July, the offensive had failed. Germany's last gamble was lost. The failed German spring offensive left their army exhausted and demoralized. The Allies, now reinforced by American troops and tanks, struck back at Amiens, shattering German lines. The 100 Days Offensive forced Germany's retreat. Facing defeat and revolution at home, Germany signed the armistice on November 11, 1918. The Great War was over. In 1919, Allied leaders met at Versailles to decide Germany's fate. The Treaty of Versailles forced Germany to accept blame for World War I, lose territory, pay huge reparations, and limit its military. Many Germans felt betrayed and humiliated. The treaty's harsh terms fueled resentment, paving the way for future conflict. The end of the Great War left Europe shattered, empires fell, new nations rose, and millions perished. The old world of kings was gone, replaced by uncertainty and loss. The scars of war shaped a lost generation, fueling unrest and setting the stage for even greater conflict to come. World War I shattered the old world, leaving behind ruin and despair. From the trenches to the home front, millions suffered. The war's horrors, machine guns, poison gas, and shell shock changed everything. When the guns fell silent in 1918, the world was forever scarred, and the echoes of the conflict would shape generations. The First World War did not truly end in 1918. Its legacy shaped our world, redrawing borders, toppling empires, and fueling new conflicts. The war's trauma changed societies, inspired innovation, and left a cautionary tale about unchecked nationalism. The white crosses of France and Belgium stand as a solemn reminder of the cost and the fragility of peace.